Almost half of American adults have high blood pressure, and almost all of them have been told the same thing at some point. Watch your sodium, cut back on processed foods, and be careful with dairy. That last piece of advice has caused millions of people to quietly remove cheese from their lives entirely. Not because a doctor told them to specifically, but because cheese feels like the kind of food that should not be on the plate of someone managing hypertension. Here is what most of those people were never told. Some cheeses can actually help lower blood pressure, not just be neutral, actively help. And the reason comes down to a mineral that most people are not thinking about at all when they think about blood pressure management. We are going through all 4 cheeses today, and I want to make sure you stick around for the explanation of why calcium matters here, because it reframes the entire conversation about dairy and blood pressure in a way that most people have never heard. The 4th cheese on this list is also probably the most versatile one, and the one most people are already using in their kitchen without realizing how much they could be leaning on it. Before we get into the cheeses themselves, there is something worth addressing directly. The instinct to avoid all cheese when managing blood pressure is completely understandable. Cheese is associated with sodium. Sodium is associated with higher blood pressure, so the logic feels airtight, but it misses a critical part of the picture, and it has led a lot of people to unnecessarily cut out a food they love when they did not have to. The research tells a more nuanced story, and once you understand it, the cheese aisle looks completely different. Let us start with the foundation, because without this context, the rest of the list does not make complete sense. When most people think about blood pressure and food, they think about sodium. High sodium raises blood pressure, low sodium helps manage it. That part is correct and it matters. But sodium is only half of the equation. Calcium has been shown in research to help lower both systolic and diastolic blood pressure. Systolic is the top number, diastolic is the bottom number, and both respond to adequate calcium intake. On top of that, magnesium and phosphorus, 2 other minerals found in dairy products, also contribute to blood pressure reduction. So the picture with dairy and blood pressure is not simply about how much sodium a cheese contains. It is about the full mineral profile and whether the calcium and other beneficial compounds outweigh the sodium load. This is why cheese choice matters so much. A cheese that is high in sodium and low in calcium is working against you. A cheese that is low in sodium and high in calcium is working for you. The 4 cheeses on this list all land in that second category, and nearly half of American adults with high blood pressure are not getting it under control, which means the food choices they make every single day have real consequences. Understanding which cheeses are on your side is not a small thing. The first cheese on the list is Swiss, and it earns its place here for one very specific reason. It has the lowest sodium content of any widely available cheese. 1 ounce of Swiss typically contains around 53 milligrams of sodium. To put that in context, the FDA defines a food as low sodium if it has less than 140 milligrams per serving. Swiss is well below that threshold. Registered dietitian Lauren Trahan explains why. Swiss cheese is not heavily processed, which means it does not go through the kind of manufacturing that drives sodium levels up in other cheese varieties. The holes you see in Swiss, which are actually called eyes, are created by carbon dioxide bubbles during fermentation. That natural fermentation process is part of what keeps the sodium content down. Along with that low sodium count, 1 ounce of Swiss delivers around 252 milligrams of calcium, which is a meaningful contribution toward the recommended daily intake of 1,300 milligrams. Low sodium plus significant calcium is exactly the combination you want. The second cheese is mozzarella, and this one has some important nuance that most people miss entirely. Not all mozzarella is the same, and the differences matter for blood pressure. Fresh mozzarella, the kind sold in water, is the best choice. It comes in at around 85 milligrams of sodium per ounce, which keeps it comfortably in the low sodium range. The water-packed version is less processed and less salty than the shrink-wrap blocks most people buy for pizza. If you prefer the low-moisture version, reaching for a part-skim or low-fat variety helps keep both the sodium and saturated fat content in a reasonable range. Dietitian Lauren Trahan suggests using mozzarella on a homemade pizza loaded with fresh vegetables, which is a practical way to build a meal that supports blood pressure management rather than working against it. The key point here is that mozzarella is an incredibly versatile cheese, and the fresh version specifically deserves more attention from people managing hypertension than it typically gets. The third cheese is goat cheese, and this one surprises people because its tangy, distinctive flavor does not immediately read as a health food. But fresh cheeses as a category tend to be lower in sodium than aged cheeses, and goat cheese is a prime example of that pattern. At around 118 milligrams of sodium per ounce, it stays below that low sodium threshold. It also delivers 85 milligrams of calcium per ounce. Registered dietitian Susie Polgreen recommends spreading it on low-sodium crackers or pairing it with fruits and vegetables. That combination works especially well because the acidity and creaminess of goat cheese pairs naturally with both sweet fruits and raw vegetables, making it easy to build snacks and appetizers around it that feel indulgent but are genuinely supportive of blood pressure management. The flavor also means you tend to use less of it, which naturally keeps portions in check. The fourth cheese is ricotta, and this is the one that earns the most enthusiasm from dietitians for a specific reason. The serving size is different. While most cheeses are measured in 1-ounce portions, ricotta is measured by the half cup, and at that quantity, it delivers 135 milligrams of sodium alongside 289 milligrams of calcium. That calcium number per serving is significantly higher than what you get from the other cheeses on this list, making ricotta one of the most efficient calcium delivery vehicles available in the dairy section. Dietitian Lauren Trahan recommends adding it to pasta, where it creates a creamy texture without the sodium load of heavier sauces. Dietitian Susie Polgreen also considers it a go-to recommendation. The mild flavor of ricotta means it works in both savory and sweet applications, which makes it genuinely easy to work into a regular eating pattern rather than treating it as an occasional ingredient. There is one broader point worth making before we wrap up. The conversation about blood pressure and food almost always focuses entirely on what to remove. Less sodium, less saturated fat, less processed food. That framing leaves people feeling like managing blood pressure means giving things up indefinitely. What this list illustrates is that the more useful frame is knowing which foods are actively working in your favor. Swiss cheese, fresh mozzarella, goat cheese, and ricotta are not compromise foods. They are not the sad substitutes you eat because you cannot have what you actually want. They are genuinely good cheeses that also happen to have a mineral profile that supports lower blood pressure when eaten as part of a consistent, balanced diet. Nearly half of American adults are living with high blood pressure, and only about 1 in 4 has it under control. That gap is not explained by a lack of medication or a lack of willingness. A lot of it comes down to not having the right information about which everyday food choices are helping and which ones are quietly making things worse. Cheese does not have to be in the second category. If nobody ever told you that cheese could actually help your blood pressure, there's a good chance there's a lot more your doctor has not had time to explain. That is exactly what this channel is for. Subscribe so you do not miss it.